My name is Frances Martin and I'm the Assistant Dean Research Training for the Faculty of Science. And today we've got a series of talks by a whole pile of different people, some lecturers, some honours students, some PhD students, all with a view to you all finding out about what might be good about doing honours and or going on to do a PhD. If you're in honours at the moment, if you're in third year at the moment, what might be good about doing honours. Before we really start, I need to let you all know that this is being recorded, and apparently everything you say gets recorded, and so does everything in the chat also get recorded. Okay, just so you're all aware, there's a little record button up the top of your screen which will tell you that it's being recorded. Okay, so a big welcome to everybody who's come into this session. We feel very strongly in the Faculty of Science that research is very important, and one of the ways that we get lots of research happening is by people doing honours and then going on to do PhDs and conducting an independent research or series of studies culminating in maybe a sort of answer to a question that they might have asked at the beginning of their PhD, and then leading on to perhaps a postdoc or perhaps working in industry doing research in a particular industry, and or leading on to getting a job in industry where your research skills that you've developed through honours and through your PhD are very much appreciated by the people who you might get a job for in almost any industry. So working in a library, the people there really appreciate research skills. Working for the public service, they absolutely appreciate research skills. Working in actual research, they definitely appreciate research skills. So if you have honours and then a PhD, you have varying levels of good, get a job fairly soon capacity. Okay, so we have quite a few talks. Mostly they go for about 5 minutes, and people will be sharing the screen because this is fully Zoom, this particular meeting, because of the nature of the world we live in at the moment. And so if everybody's fairly okay with how they can Zoom their thing, we will make a start. I assume that there'll be a little bit of a gap between each of the talks as people work out how to share their screen and get themselves ready to actually do the talk. Okay, any questions at the moment? If you have a question, pop off, mute, and I'll very possibly be able to see, or pop off video and wave at me.
But there is a raise hand button as well, or alternatively,
Or wave a hand.
type it into chat.
Alternatively, come off video and just start talking. Okay, no questions at the moment. Okay, so we'll move right ahead. Our first presenter is Catherine Dawson. Do we have Catherine?
Yep, I'm here.
Cool. All right, so Catherine's doing a PhD in biological sciences and is about to share her screen.
Yes, I am.
Thanks, Catherine.
Okay, can you guys see that all right? Oh, hang on. Okay, can you see my screen okay?
We can see your screen. It's on, lots of slides on the left-hand side and the other one, but that's okay. We can manage it.
Oh, I'll start it now. How's that?
Oh, there you go. Yep, perfect. Well done.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Catherine.
Okay, I'll get started.
Yep.
So as Frances just said, my name is Catherine Dawson and I'm studying a PhD in biological sciences in the Faculty of Science. So just a little bit about my background. I graduated from a Bachelor of Biotechnology Honours in 2019, and I am 7 weeks into my PhD, so I've definitely got a long way to go. My area of study, as I've said, is biological science, but focusing in molecular microbiology. So I did my honours looking at novel antimicrobials for use in gram-negative bacteria. And my PhD has changed a little bit, looking at polymicrobial biofilms and the genes that are involved in biofilm formation. Now, when I was putting together this talk, I kind of, rather than just telling you about me, I thought it might be more useful to talk about some of the things that I wanted to know before I started honours. So hopefully you find that useful. So some of the good things are that you definitely get to take ownership of and drive an independent research project. And it's probably the first opportunity that you really get to do that in your undergraduate. That comes hand in hand with the fact that you'll be working on novel cutting edge research. So you will actually be doing things that no one potentially has done before. It is also very self-directed. So there is some flexibility with when and how you do your research. You somewhat get to choose when you do things, which is nice. You get to focus on a research area of interest. So rather than like coursework where it's a prescribed course and there's set content, hopefully at this stage you get to focus in on something that you're really interested in. And a lot of people don't realise, but if things go well in your honours and definitely through your PhD, there is the potential to get your findings published, which is exciting. But then there are some not so great things about honours. So honours can be quite time pressured, not so much with your PhD, you've got about 3.5 years, but for honours you've only got about 9 months. And believe me, that goes more quickly than you think it will. So you've got to fit into that your research planning, your data collection, your data analysis, and your write-up. So don't underestimate it. There's also an expectation that while you are conducting your research, you'll be reading the relevant literature related to your topic. And that can be quite challenging to balance those two things. Being self-directed is a double-edged sword. So with that freedom comes responsibility. So while you get to somewhat decide when you do things and how you do things, there are also certain milestones that you have to meet. And so you are responsible for meeting those milestones. And it can be quite tricky to balance your study with other commitments. So, you know, you might have to work and you definitely should exercise and see friends, and all of those things are still really important. You really should make those a priority, but it can be difficult to balance those things. So all in all, is it worth it? I think that really depends where you want to go. So you probably don't want to hear this, but you really now need to think about what it is you want to do in the future. I know I hated thinking about that, but you know, if you want to go down the research path, honours is a prerequisite for HDR studies, so it's definitely required for a PhD and some master's programs. Keep in mind that HDR scholarships are really quite competitive at the moment, but they're not impossible to get. So you might just have to be a bit strategic about it. So potentially you can look at labs and see if they have any extra funding available for scholarships that they might be able to give you. But as Francis said at the start, you do learn a lot of transferable skills throughout your honours and PhD. And at the end, you get a huge sense of accomplishment. You know, you can look back at what you've done and really feel like you've contributed. But above all, I would urge anyone who's thinking about it to not doubt themselves. There is a massive problem in science with imposter syndrome and people feeling like they don't, you know, have the skills to be able to do it. You definitely do. Everyone's probably feeling that way. So if you want to do it, go for it. So that's all I really have to say.
Thank you, Catherine. That was really interesting, really good. I just want to graduate, yes.
You probably feel like that by the end.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
All right, I'll stop sharing now.
Thanks. Okay, thank you, Catherine. And our next speaker is Evan Gibbs. Have we got Evan?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Evan.
Hey.
Have you got something to share, or are you just going to talk?
I'm just going to riff wildly.
Well done. Okay.
So if there is any questions, you should put them in the chat. I will just talk a bit about myself to start with. So I started a degree a little bit later than most people. I spent 15 years in hospitality and then decided to come back to uni. And at the end of my degree, which I did a Bachelor of Science, I decided to go into honours as well. My area of honours was something that I did not learn anything about within the degree. I went into microbiology and I didn't really study any microbiology within my undergraduate degree. And I found that I loved it once I got into honours. And so I think the main thing to take away from what I'm going to say today is you have started and are about to complete an undergraduate degree, and that's excellent and that's an achievement in itself. But remember, this is just the foundation of what you're potentially interested and what you might want to learn about. So, as I said, I did microbiology in my honours year and I found it fantastic, but I didn't really have any experience. So don't go closing doors before you've actually peeked behind all the doors that are available to open is something that I would definitely think about. As far as time commitments are concerned, honours, as Catherine said, is really, really stressful for time. You've got 9 months to get a good amount of work done. It's interesting and it's a lot easier in a certain aspect than the undergrad because you're focusing on one topic. You actually can become a little bit of an expert in that topic, which is great. It's not the kind of learning you've probably been used to up until this stage. And it's very difficult at the beginning to get your head around it. You've got to really get up to speed quickly. But as you move through your honours year, you'll really start to know what's going on, and you'll be able to think about things in a totally different way. And this was completely transformative for me. I didn't plan to do a PhD, which is what I'm doing now. I plan to go out and get a job. And I loved the idea of research in a specific area so much that I then applied for a PhD and got one. And so my PhD is in, once again, microbiology because I like it, and in a new emerging area, synthetic biology, where I'm trying to produce small molecules within bacteria for industrial purposes. As far as PhDs are concerned, they're a little bit different to an honours. They're not so much of a sprint, they're more of a marathon. And I'm at just after the 1 year mark. So I've been confirmed in my PhD now, which means I've gone through a process of putting forward a research proposal. I've had a year to prepare for that. And that research proposal was accepted by the university, and now I am able to carry on with my research. And that's going really well for me at the moment. But you do need to work out what you want to do. I really love microbiology. I wouldn't be able to do this in plant biology, for example. That is something I don't like. And so, as I said, make sure you ask the questions of what you potentially could be interested. You might have gone through the whole of your degree studying something in particular, and you might want to think about, maybe I can just pivot a little bit. So for someone in maths, for example, maybe they might pivot a little bit towards bioinformatics, which is a new area that everyone's being involved in, or statistics, something along those lines. Realistically, Catherine's covered a lot of the things that I was going to talk about. The other thing too is, remember that the university is a big place and there's lots of things to be involved in, and extracurricular activities are something that are really important to get involved in, and they keep you connected within the community, and especially the research community. So becoming a member of, for example, the Society of Microbiology for me, and getting access to these academic lectures really opened up my my world of what's out there. And as well as those extracurricular things, there are other opportunities within the university. I, for example, am the postgraduate rep on the academic senate, and the postgraduate rep for research. And that's been a fascinating part of university that I'm starting to get involved with. Is there any questions out there at this stage? No? Well, I might just leave it there, Francis.
Yep, right. Thank you, Evan. That was really good. I think if anybody's got any questions, they can either send me an email and I'll direct the question to the right person. Just say, send me an email to FSCI Research Training at newcastle.edu.au. Ask the question, say, I really wanted to ask Evan this, or I really wanted to ask Catherine that, and we'll forward on the emails to the right person to get you an answer. any sort of general questions that you have, just let me know. Yes, Evan.
I might just put an addendum in there. There is a bit of Catherine touched on imposter syndrome a little bit. There is a bit of a problem with all graduates who come through where they don't actually put forward in their honours year or their PhD, they don't actually ask questions of the academics, which is something that I've noticed is a bit of a problem in our area. And really you need to ask those stupid questions, because remember, you were just starting out. You have the basic foundation where you're coming out of your undergraduate. These research years, which can be so rewarding, can be really much more rewarding if you're prepared to talk to the academics that are in your area, and not just the academics in your area. Talk to academics from other parts of the university as well. They are the leaders in the field. They are here to help you, and they would like to help you. They really get a kick out of having questions asked, be them the most inane questions or the most complex questions, because that's exactly what we're all here to do, is to learn something new and have a chat about it.
Yep.
Anyway, that's it.
Cool. Thank you, Evan. And a quick answer to the question about the time is Evan started his PhD a year ago, and the second milestone for the PhD is to get confirmed, which isn't the same as a proposal, it's a confirmation. And that just means I've done a whole pile of research for my PhD already, and it looks like I'll be able to get a PhD after another 2.5 years. So the whole PhD is 3.5 years. Confirmation happens at the end of the first year. And sorry, submission happens at the end of the third year. Sorry, I've got a scratchy throat.
How much are academics involved in helping plan the project?
I can help with that one. So it's important, I'm talking to a cashier. It's important that you actually do have some conversations with academics, and you should start having those conversations now. Each of the academics at the university will work on a sort of a specific area, and you need to see if what you're interested in or something that you want to research further is in that academics area of interest. And there's lots and lots of academics at this uni, and they all do something slightly different. So it's also answering a further question down in the chat. The specific research question often falls under the purview of your supervisor, who is who's the academic who's sort of looking after you, will fall under their umbrella of academic influence, maybe. So they definitely help you, and they definitely are happy to help you and happy to talk about pretty much their life's work and how your little research question can fit into their bigger picture.
Thanks, Evan. I think we should move along now. Our next presenter is Kay Fong, who's a lecturer in psychology. A lecturer in chemistry, and was actually awarded the 2020 ECR Australian Colloid and Interface Society ACIS lectureship. Okay, so if you're here, Kay, and ready, and she is, and she's
I am. Wait, have I shared my screen correctly? Zoom seems to have disappeared.
You started sharing, but there's just a blank screen thus far.
Okay.
Yep.
Now I'm good?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to start by introducing myself. I'm Kay. I apparently know a lot about very little, so I'll tell you a bit about my research story. I did my undergraduate in pharmaceutical science, and this was at Monash University. I then did honours at Monash. I got to know my honours supervisor on a field trip to the brewery. So we discovered a love of formulating beer and also drinking said beer. So we started talking about research, and then when it came to apply for my honours year, I said, all right, let's go with Ben. he seems like a cool dude who does some really good research. Then I did my PhD with him as well. In my PhD, I shot nanoparticles with lasers and tried to activate some drug release from them. I then went to Switzerland for 2 postdocs. One was at ETH Zurich, which is the main university there. I was looking at the interaction of nanoparticles with enzymes, trying to activate drug release again. Then I did a second postdoc at a nanoscience center in Freiburg, Switzerland, where I looked at the interaction between nanoparticles and biological molecules. So then I came here. So I am a lecturer. I started 18 months ago or so. So I'm still building my research group and all that jazz, also developing new passions for new areas of research as well as teaching. So I'll tell you a bit about that now. So I just introduced myself and told you I know a lot about very little, but how little. So this is one of those rulers that you get at in primary school. The scale I'm talking about is on the millimeter scale. So one of my new research areas is looking at microplastics, which is less than 5 millimeters, or 1/100th of a meter. But most of my research has looked at nanoparticles, and this is 1/1000th of a meter. So that's how little I'm talking about. So the majority of my research has thus far looked at stimuli responsive nanoparticles. So I told you in my PhD, I shot nanoparticles with lasers trying to activate drug release. And this is good for treating diseases where you have, for instance, in macular degeneration, you get multiple injections straight into the back of your eye. But with a laser activated drug delivery, we could inject one injection, and instead of the subsequent doses being straight into the back of your eye with a needle, we can just hit it with a laser, open the nanoparticles and give you your drug that way. These materials are also interesting for diagnostic purposes. At the moment, I've got an honours student who is working on the interaction of these nanoparticles with your microbiota. I'm trying to see whether that can also enhance drug release. A passion project that started because I'm teaching in environmental science at the moment, and something that I wasn't sure I'd ever do, but it's actually been a lot of fun. Through this subject, I've met a bunch of people who work with microplastics. So microplastics are an invisible scourge on the ocean. They trick small animals, small marine animals, into thinking they're food. And in that way, the marine creatures get poisoned. And we're also affected too. I mean, we're part of the marine food web. So in order to address this microplastic disease in our ocean, I joined some colleagues in Sail and Explore Association, OSMAP, the Great Global Nettle Hunt, and Take 3 for the Sea, to see whether we could address this problem together. So the way that we approached it is we sampled in the Whitsundays. We analysed the plastics in terms of colour, size, shape, and plastic type. And with this data and with our non-for-profit partners, we're trying to agitate and educate for change. So this is what we did in the Whitsundays. We sailed around this harbour around Early Beach using this manta trawl setup. And this was our team for the 2 weeks. And we're currently still analysing the data, but we have a lot of plastics that are less than 300 microns, which are really, they really come from your clothes. So I guess the take-home message from that would be to be careful of your plastic choices. So that was just a bit of a taster about what I do and what I've done. This is my contact details. If you want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram, let me know. And if you have any questions, please chuck them in the chat.
Okay, thank you, Kay. It's amazing work you're doing. Thank you for sharing. That was in the chat, and my throat stopped tickling, so I should be fairly okay from now on.
I'm just catching up on the questions. Cool.
Yeah.
No questions, I see.
Right, if anybody's really interested in doing an honours project with Kay or doing a PhD with Kay, she's on the university website.
Yeah,
You
I
can
also
send
have
her an
an
email.
open PhD position.
Ah, there you go, see? And she actually has an open PhD position with a scholarship, Kay.
Yes, with the
Yes,
scholarship.
there you go. There you go, an interesting option for somebody. And remember, Evan said that you need to have the basic skills to work in the area, but you can certainly pivot sideways.
Yeah,
A little bit.
that's true. My honours student was actually did a major in organic chemistry, but now
Yep.
he's dipping his toe into microbiology plus physical chemistry. So
Yes. Yep. So don't feel constrained as an honours student by what you did in undergraduate, and don't feel constrained as a potential PhD student by what you did in honours. You can swap supervisors from honours to PhD very easily. Okay, go with something that's really interesting for PhDs. Okay, thank you, Kay.
no worries.
Our next presenter is Roseanne Hart, who's doing a PhD in Earth Sciences. We have Roseanne. Did you have a screen to share, Roseanne?
No, just.
That's okay, you're just going to talk.
Yes.
That's cool. Okay, thanks.
Thank you for that, Francis. So hi, my name is Rosie Hart, and my journey through the University of Newcastle started through the Open Foundation, through enabling program, all the way through to undergrad, honours, and I have just started my PhD this year. So today I'll just give you a bit of a quick talk as to why I entered both the honours and PhD programs and the general progression along that academic journey that I encountered. So I first got a taste for research when I completed what was then called the SCIP 2500 course, which I think is now Sci 2500. And it enabled me to conduct research in coastal research and coastal lagoons along the Central Coast. So having majored in marine science and geology, I had been on quite a few field trips. So going out and collecting data was not something new, but this was the first time that I was going out and getting my data. And yeah, it was used in my own independent research, and it felt quite pioneering, and it gave me a sense of ownership and pride to the project. And it was of no surprise that the project planted the seed to undertake honours. However, I have to say that it wasn't an easy decision. So I have a young family, and it did go against the initial ambition to go out into the workforce and earn money. So, and plant my feet basically into the professional workforce. However, looking back, by undertaking honours, I actually gained more employability than if I had entered the workforce straight away. So I had a much more competitive edge when I had completed honours, and I was able to actually get a higher job, a higher level job than if I'd just entered in under undergrad. So onto my actual honours research. My honours research was basically what my SCIP 2500 course was on and what my project was on, but on steroids. So I knew who I wanted my supervisor to be, but I didn't know what I wanted to study. I wanted it to be something that would be of value in the professional world. I wanted it to be something topical, possibly even controversial. And I wanted it to be something that wouldn't put me in too much of a niche industry or field of research. So what I ended up studying was tidal harmonics and water levels in coastal lakes, which was quite a topic of interest considering the proximity to Australia's largest coastal lake, which is Lake Macquarie, and the recent inundation in surrounding areas such as Marks Point and Swansea. My honours experience wasn't just about reading scientific papers and sitting in an office. I got to learn new software and tools. I got to learn a new programming language, which I'm still learning and probably in 10 years' time will be continuing to learn, and to solve problems independently. There is a real sense of accomplishment when you identify a problem, you investigate it, you toil over it, you're probably going to lose sleep over it, and then you ultimately solve. And this feeling of accomplishment is what, for me, drove me through my honours research. I even had the opportunity to present my research at the Australasian Coast and Ports Conference up in Cairns, so I got to travel as well, where I was awarded the Women in Coastal Geoscience and Engineering Award and had a paper published in the conference proceedings. So there was a real sense of pride about that, and that really drove my sense of wanting to do more research. And this had a profound effect on my public speaking skills, and it was here, surrounded by some of the greatest minds in coastal research, that I fell in love with the idea of undertaking a PhD as well. However, for me personally, I felt that I needed to utilise my skills in the workforce first, so I wanted to gain a perspective of science in practice. And I was offered a position with the state government as a spatial analyst, and continued that position for a couple of years before feeling the pull back to the university to start my PhD. So as I said, I started my PhD this year, and coming from working in a structured state government role, there is an adjustment to new working pace, and I guess you could say starting from scratch again. But so far it is extremely rewarding. So I've chosen swash zone hydrodynamics to study for the next 3 years, which means that I get to mentally and physically immerse myself in a topic that I feel passionately for which is beaches and our understanding of them. So I get to go to beaches, which is pretty awesome. This week I get to go into the field and hopefully get some of my own data which can be used to analyse swash zone processes, which is pretty exciting. Pretty cold, but pretty exciting nonetheless. And being involved in a research group that collectively has similar interests is an amazing feeling as well. It's supportive, nurturing, and fosters personal and professional growth. So whilst daunting at times, knowing that there is still a great academic distance to travel, I'm enjoying the journey so far, struggles and all. And whilst networking and conferences is for now out of the picture, I was lucky enough to be on the local organising committee of the Australian Young Coastal Science and Engineering Conference, which transitioned to an online delivery in lieu of the current restrictions. And this is a really wonderful opportunity to meet and establish rapport with early to mid-career academics and professionals in my area of interest. And it was just another example of the variety of possible opportunities undertaking a high degree by research can offer you. And just lastly, I just wanted to add this little bit on the end that a lot of people have commented that starting a PhD in pandemic is stressful. However, it actually feels like a safe thing to do for me. Having a scholarship, there is a steady income coming in, albeit not great, not huge, but it's enough to get by. And it helps you direct your attention to positive areas of your life. So I'm basically too busy trying to learn Python in order to get caught up in the negativity of the social climate right now. And just to summarise, from my experience, undertaking an honours program is extremely rewarding. You will grow in ways you never thought possible. It won't be easy, and at times you'll think, oh my God, what was I thinking? But you will overcome hurdles, you'll solve problems, and you'll develop many valuable skills in the process. Yeah, and that's me.
Okay, thank you very much, Roseanne. That was very interesting. Your volume went up and down a bit, but we could hear you most of the time.
Okay.
It was cool. Okay, if there are any questions for Roseanne, pop them into the chat now.
I'll do my best to answer them. Yep.
Okay, if you have any questions, just remember, let us know down the track. But it sounds like you've had a really interesting journey, Roseanne.
Sorry about the volume, it's
no trouble.
I think it's to do with the construction that they're doing outside of the office at the moment, so I'll just blame that.
Oh, it could be. Actually, I thought it was just because you had a little computer with a very focused microphone.
No,
outside the office, yep, absolutely. All
Yeah.
that construction stuff is very difficult sometimes. Cool, thank you. Okay, so our next presenter on our list is Hannah Power. Do we have Hannah?
Yep. Hi, Francis.
Hi, Hannah. And Hannah's a senior lecturer in the School of Earth Sciences, and she's the honours coordinator. So in among all the other things that she's going to tell you, she's going to tell everybody how to go about doing honours in earth sciences. Thanks, Hannah.
Thanks, Francis. So I thought I'd start off with a little bit of a description of how I've ended up where I've ended up. So hopefully everyone can see my screen now. So I am a coastal scientist in the Earth Science department within the School of Environmental and Life Sciences. And I've ended up here because I've always had an interest in science, but when I was 14, I learned to scuba dive, and I learned to scuba dive up on the Great Barrier Reef. And it was one of those things where you just think, wow, this is incredible. I want to learn more about this. And so I went to university and I enrolled in a marine science degree. And I got to the end of the second year and realized that biology was not for me. So that kind of paid to my plans of being a sort of marine biologist or marine ecologist. But at the same time, I'd had to do a number of different subjects where we'd studied beaches and coastal systems. And so I enrolled in an honours degree I was at the University of Sydney, and I did a project looking at how waves change after they break. So we measured wave heights, we looked at how quickly wave height changes after waves break, and came up with some really novel observations, which was really exciting. I really liked that. As Rosie said, Rosie, I should say, is my PhD student who just spoke to you. As she said, you know, the joy of being able to get paid to go to the beach is a pretty good one. And so I thought, yep, I'll keep doing this. And I moved up to Brisbane to enroll in a PhD. And I continued to go and work on a really amazing array of beaches. And my PhD looked at, again, how waves change after they break on sandy beaches and the implications that that has for how sand is moved around and how our beaches change. I spent lots of time doing field work. That was really what interested me. As Rosie said, that excitement of going out and collecting your own data and knowing that you've measured something that no one's ever really measured before is really exciting, and really drove me to be to do what I did in my PhD and to want to do something that really was a field-based project. So we did these kind of deployments where we're putting lots of instruments on the beach, measuring lots of different parameters, including the speed at which the water's moving, how much sand is in the water column, all of those kind of things. Also work in conditions that are perhaps less than pleasant. So these two photos were taken when there was a tropical cyclone sitting off Fraser Island. These are in the Gold Coast. And on a normal day, that photo on the right, you would actually see the Gold Coast, multi-story skyscrapers behind me. I've also been really lucky in being able to do some lab work. This is a facility in Spain where, because normally when we measure processes on a beach, we can't control things like how big the waves are, what type of waves they are, the shape of the beach at the start of your day, whether or not there's wind. So we're able to use facilities like this laboratory facility here that has all these instruments, and then it also has a big paddle at one end that creates waves based on your specifications. So this is a bit of a feel for what it might look like if you're working in one of these facilities and it's running and you're generating waves of a particular type. And here we're looking at how groups of waves or sets of waves change the shape of the beach. So you'll see in this video that the size of the waves changes as we go through. Again, I've worked, as I said, in some really interesting and exciting places. This is a beach on the west coast of Denmark. This is summer, believe it or not. And here again, we're looking at how waves move sand about on a beach. And then because this is my primary research area, this is also what I do for my teaching. And there are a couple of names, at least in the list of participants that I can see there, that have done this course, where we go up to Pacific Palms and we look at the beaches and we study how the beaches change. We look at the different types of beaches that you get there, and we measure some wave processes. So in terms of what you get out of honours, so that's a sort of quick summary of my background and how I've ended up where I've ended up. the kinds of things that you learn in honours are you learn how to manage your own project, you learn how to work independently. You know, you don't get given step-by-step instructions that say, click this button, write this sentence, open this program, copy this data. You have to work that out yourself. So you go from being someone who can do a project that's very directed to someone who can actually work independently and drive your own project. You also learn time management. As our first presenter said, honours is really short. It goes really, really quickly. And so if you're really forced to learn time management because you have no other option. You learn critical thinking skills. So you learn to read a paper, think about it, is what it's telling you correct? Were their methods appropriate for the kind of conclusions that they wanted to reach? So you get to learn about all of these different things. And the other thing I would say with honours is that you work really closely with your supervisor. And it'll probably be the first time in your undergraduate degree, unless you've done one of these sort of advanced research project type things, or these work integrated learning research projects with an academic at the university. It's probably the first time where you really start to get a feel for what research actually is. You get a feel for how it works, you get a feel for what a day as a researcher might look like, and you also really will improve your writing because you'll get feedback from your supervisor on your writing as you go, and that's probably one of the most critical skills. I think the skills that you come out of honours with that are the most critical in sorry, I've just seen a question pop up. The skills that you see that you gain that are most critical in terms of honours are your writing skills, your critical thinking skills, your project management skills. So they're all those skills that are really transferable. You'll also gain skills and knowledge in your particular field. So Rosie, for example, when she did honours with me, gained really specific skills about how tides behave in estuaries. But that knowledge is not the key knowledge that she needs to do her PhD. The key knowledge and key skills she needs to do her PhD are those soft skills. They're those, writing skills, project management skills, critical thinking skills, critical analysis skills. So they're the kind of things that you gain in honours, and they're the things that really give you an edge over other people when you go out into the workforce. If you've got honours compared to someone who just has an undergraduate degree, the skills that you can say that you have when you go for a job are going to be the skills that really make the difference between getting a position and not getting a position. There is a question here from Greg from the Careers Service. So, do I see many of my students grow during their honours year? And yeah, absolutely. The growth that I see in students in an honours year easily exceeds the growth that I see in a student from first year through to third year. You will learn more in your honours year than you will have learnt in the previous 3 years combined in terms of skills and your capacity as a scientist. And then lastly, I think the only other thing I will say is if you want to enrol in honours, and this probably is, aside from perhaps psychology, this is probably pretty consistent across science. The first thing you need to do is you need to go and speak to a supervisor. So look at the academics who've taught you throughout your undergraduate degree. Think about what really interests you, because you're going to be working on this full time for 8 to 9 months. So you've got to be interested in it. If you're not interested in it, you're not going to do well in honours. Go and speak to academics, ask what projects they have on offer, ask if they're going to take more than one student. Some academics, myself included, have a cap on the number of honours students they will take because it's too much work to have more than a certain number of students. So, a lot of us run on a sort of first come, first serve basis. So if you want to do honours with me, for example, come and see me ASAP or send me an email. Once you've lined up a supervisor, you then need to complete the paperwork to enrol in honours. In previous years, that hasn't been due until after the 1st of December. Lena's nodding. I'm guessing that means that's going to be probably about the same this year. I'll let Lena explain that later, maybe. But the key thing is to talk to a supervisor and line them up and get them to commit to working with you in your honours year. You then need to enrol in your subjects. and, you know, go through any sort of pre-learning procedures or if there are induction procedures for labs and things like that. So if anyone has any questions, I'm able to hang around for a bit. I can answer some questions in the chat, but that's a sort of quick 101 on honours, how I've ended up where I've ended up, and honours in earth science. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Hannah. Very interesting, and you're quite right. Psychology is very, very different. And honours applications are due by the 31st of January. And that's true for psychology and everybody else in science. Okay.
Thank you.
Cool. Right, so our next presenter is Aaron Eastley.
Yep.
Have we got Aaron? Cool. Okay, Aaron, did you have some slides or are you just going to chat to us?
Yep, I've got some slides.
Cool. Aaron completed a Bachelor of Mathematics with honours in the middle of the year, only just finished. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you. So thank you for inviting me to talk today. It's an absolute honour to be talking amongst so many incredible and wonderful researchers and staff at the University of Newcastle. So a bit about me before I begin. I grew up in Goulburn in a regional area, and during high school I first got a taste of research by being involved in a Department of Primary Industry research project that was going on at my high school, which was to use a biological control agent to control a noxious weed of Patterson curse rather than using pesticides. And through completing that study, I was able to see how through collecting data provides this ability to communicate with the environment, the community and the world, and where we can look at changes and see what is occurring. Are they good or bad changes, and the ways we can do that. Initially at university, I started out doing a Bachelor of Mechatronic and Mechanical Engineering for 2 years, but I soon missed that science and mathematics background, so I transferred back to a Bachelor of Science and Mathematics. During my Bachelor of Mathematics, I learned some amazing and new concepts, and they allowed this data, which follows different distributions and different approaches and collected from all over the place and fields, to be recorded and compared. Through completing statistics subjects and completing a statistical major, I was able to reconnect with this notion of communication through statistics and data, where these changes in environments and community could be measured, where we can talk to things that we can't traditionally talk to through the data, which is becoming really important in today's world where data is everywhere. In my final year of my undergrad, I was lucky enough to be involved in a research project for my final semester regarding the iTread program, which is an internet online treatment program for alcohol and depression symptoms in young adults. And we were trying to assess whether we could predict candidates who would complete the clinical trial before they actually commence by using their screened survey variables. And this allowed the merging of statistics with real world data to be presented and communicated through completing this project. And afterwards, I went straight away and did my Bachelor of Mathematics and Honours, and whereby I continue with the iPred program as my project with Dr. Robert King as my supervisor. And the beautiful thing about doing your honours in any subjects, especially mathematics, was that it was able to flow on from my undergraduate, where I was able to use the approaches in a more in-depth way and apply those to those real-life data. I would highly recommend doing honours, as it provides that ability that everybody gets to be involved in their own project across the 2 semesters, which is a perfect introduction to applying skills and statistics learnt during your undergrad. And it provides that ability to, before you go to the workplace, to see how to take the data from its raw form, process and produce results. It's an incredible experience where you get to not only work on a project, but the opportunity to problem solve and work with your supervisor in overcoming problems with creative solutions and new approaches and ideas when they're appropriate. So it provided this new ability to new skills and approaches, including programming, where I learned a lot of new programming, including using a supercomputer to run simulations for the particular project I was involved with, which was a really great experience, as well as creating a network of new people you meet through your supervisor and in the department at the university. This made honours one of the best experiences of my life, and I really enjoyed it. And another amazing part of honours is the director courses, which make up the remaining part of the course, where you get to learn in greater detail about statistical and mathematical approaches, and from incredibly talented and friendly supervisors who are brilliant in their specialised areas, and they come across very clear and precise in their communication of their field of area, and you get to learn a lot more in depth. The amazing part of honours for me was the ability to not only recollect on the knowledge learned during my undergrad, but the ability to intercompare and synthesize and then analyze and generate abstractions based on that data, and by using the mathematical and statistical approaches, including new approaches which I developed in my project, which was appropriate because there was no current way. And through that, you get to see firsthand that data come through to produce results which no one has seen before. And that's really an exciting thing. And the ability to help people through creating models from that data is really an outstanding part of honours. I gained a good background on subjects as well through my honours, as well as you get many career opportunities along the way, and people will send you emails about job opportunities, and it sets a perfect path and foundation to complete high research degrees. So this is just a quick little look at an algorithm that was required for my project. So we had multiple models across 4 follow-ups, and we wanted to reduce that down to 1. So we were required to come up with a new algorithm to produce those 4 CART models to classify in regression trees into a single model so that we could predict candidate completion. And we ended up coming up with this final model where we could use the different screener survey variables that a candidate completed before completing the clinical trial, and we could predict whether they were going to complete, not attempt, or incomplete in the final clinical trial before they even began. And we got about a 60 to 70% accuracy rate of being able to predict those candidates through that final project. So after honours, I loved the research component so much and being involved in the project during my honours, but I have now gone on to be selected as a PhD candidate where I will be working on facial recognition technology to assist diagnosing children with rare genetic disorders with intellectual disabilities. We'll be able to compare similar facial structures and be able to look at children who together and be able to diagnose at a much earlier age so that they can get the appropriate treatment at the time, which I'm looking forward to. And doing a Bachelor of Mathematics has created a strong foundation to continue in research with that. Finally, I'll just finish. I'll always remember to back yourself and believe in whatever you want to do and your dreams. It doesn't matter what has happened in the past, what's happened in your undergrad regarding marks or subjects that you've completed in the past. You can do whatever you want if you put your mind to it, so there's no worries there. Doing honours is an incredible journey and I've loved every moment, and I cannot recommend enough for everyone to complete as well. It's been the most wonderful experience and part of my life, and I'm very much looking forward to continuing that with my PhD starting the end of this year. So thank you all for listening. I really appreciate your time today and being able to talk.
Thank you, Aaron. It looks like you've had a really, really exciting journey, and there's more to come.
More to come, yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody has a question? Greg has a question for you, Aaron. Can you see the chat?
Yep, chat's come up.
Yeah. Do you want to answer that question?
So you meet a lot of network of people, so through your supervisors and lecturers, and you get to be hands-on and talk to those. And by finding solutions to your problem, you get to be introduced to new people you wouldn't normally be able to. And I think you could definitely get lots of information, emails. So I had one particular government department in Canberra continually email me after I put that I'd done a Bachelor of Mathematics honours on my LinkedIn page. So it's definitely worth doing and increases your probability of getting a job because people come looking for you and outreach towards you.
Yep, I think you're 100% right. And I think that one of the big things about mathematics is that it's sort of in some ways undersold, but the people who are getting the inquiries from the people in Canberra are the people like you with the mathematics honours degrees.
Yeah.
Because they're very highly sought after. Yep. Thank you very much, Aaron.
Thank you.
Okay, our next presenter is Dr. Robert King, who's going to tell us all about, he's a senior lecturer in mathematics or statistics, one of those two. He's going to tell me which one it is in a minute, aren't you, Robert?
His stats.
First,
Yep.
he's going to turn off his thing,
Stats.
your
Yep.
stats, right?
Yep, I'm stats.
Cool. Okay.
No slides, just talk. Let's run through this. So I'm a statistician. One of the things I love about statistics is it has applications just about everywhere. And so one of the fun things about research in statistics is you get to do bits of all sorts of things. So I've had a chance to work on literacy, robotics, and image analysis, and response time analysis as some examples of things that I've worked on. Statistics in honours you can do as part of a Bachelor of Mathematics honours or a Bachelor of Science honours, and which one you choose basically depends on the way that you focus. The other thing I wanted to particularly talk about was co-supervision. If you're doing a research higher degree, a master's or PhD, it's compulsory that you have more than one supervisor. And if you're doing honours, you can have more than one supervisor. And that's a good idea because it gives you both backup in addition to your one supervisor, but it also allows you to have complementary expertise. And so one thing that I encourage students in science to think about is if you're doing something that is particularly statistically complex, to reach out and have a chat to me or other statisticians about having a co-supervisor in statistics. So if you're doing something that is going to require relatively sophisticated statistics, the time to try and get some help with that is early rather than later. So have a chat to us about that. I'll just wrap up because I notice we're behind time, so I'm going to go fast. I'll just wrap up by saying things that I'm interested in are both those application things, robotics, image analysis, ecology, and on a more theoretical side, I'm interested in things that aren't normal. So hopefully you paid attention in Stat 1070 and you know that we assume normality in a whole stack of methods. What I spend a lot of time working on is what do we do when our data does not follow the normal distribution. So that wraps me up and we're hopefully back on time, 2:57.
Thank you very much, Robert. Very interesting. I second Robert's request, plea, whatever. But the idea that if you're doing a PhD in an area which is going to require some sort of fancy statistical analysis, i.e. something more than the standard biological science t-tests, then talking to the statisticians, Robert and the other guys there, and with a view to maybe having them as a co-supervisor for honours, PhD, masters, whatever, is a really, really good idea. And as we already learned, those statistics skills are really sought after by industry and by the public service people and by NGOs. Okay, so thank you, Robert. Any questions, pop them into the chat. Bye, Catherine. Thank you very much. We'll send you any questions that anybody wants to specifically ask you, okay? Thank you. So our next presenter is Emmy Guil. I have trouble with this. It's a French name, I think.
Yeah, that's okay.
Sorry, I always have trouble with this one. And Emmy is a PhD student in statistics. So thanks.
Yes. So I'm just going to share my screen quickly. Can everyone see?
Yes, we're good.
My slides?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think what I'm going to say is going to complete what Robert was saying, because I'm doing a PhD in statistics, and I wasn't destined to do that at all. 10 years ago, I would never thought I would do a PhD in statistics, and it has been a journey, but every part of it, I think, build up to the experience you need to choose where you're going. So let's start with what I did before. So like I did my high school in France. We have a different kind of school system, but basically I did a specialization in science, especially biology. And after that, well, I didn't do university. I didn't go to university. I went to a certain path that we call preparatory school. It leads to veterinary and engineering schools, because like many kids, I wanted to be a vet. And obviously I didn't do it, but through this experience, that was an intense 2 years of building knowledge, I went to engineering school in agronomy. So agronomy kind of wrap up environmental resources, either in agriculture environment, hydrology, food science, many different aspects, and you can specialize yourself toward the end. That was for me a great experience because they allow you to grow as a person in research. At first, because I didn't go to university, because I didn't have much experience in research, as I wasn't sure what to do. And that led me with different experience overseas, testing research to do a research master in ecology, also in Montpellier in the south of France. And I specialize myself in ecosystem. So I did this master at the end of my engineering degree as a co-hosted master. So pretty much never came to university, but I learned about research and got more and more interested about it. And that's one of the first steps to do a PhD, is to be interested in research. But why and how I decided to do a PhD? Well, it's part of that. You have a curiosity, you want to get knowledge on something. That was one of the main things for me. I always wanted to explain something, to get to know why it's working like that, why, how we can explain it. And choosing a path in research also through every kind of path. For me, it was my engineering degree, but for you, it can be honors. It's to improve your skills, to build up kind of this toolbox as a scientist. And how it works, I would think that there's three main aspects of it. You have to find a subject that you're really interested in, because if honors is maybe a year, it's still a year of your life that you're going to dedicate to it, but PhD is 3 years, 3 years and a half, maybe more depending on other countries, so you have to be really interested in, because you may get sick of it at some point, so make sure you're at least at first very interested in. Finding a great supervisor is also a key aspect, because finding a great supervisor in terms of fame won't help you achieve your best. You have to find someone that can help you grow, someone that is able to listen to you and someone you're going to collaborate with, because research is all about collaboration and learning from each other. So it's good to have those aspects, but also you have to plan what you want to do. No matter what experience you're doing, you have to have a plan, maybe think about what you want to do after, but don't restrain yourself, because each little experience that you have on the side, each skill that you build will help you become a researcher and help you in terms of your PhD. But what is it actually like to do a PhD? Well, it's hard. I'm not going to lie. There is sometimes that it is hard. And as a third year PhD student, well, it has been bumps along the road. But what I like about a PhD is that you can have a rewarding set of skills. For the field skill, I didn't really build it for my PhD, but I built it before in experiences that were outside of my research or studying area. I worked with sharks and turtles, doing some volunteer field work. I did some banding for birds in France also. So I built those skills before, but that helped me in terms of understanding what I was doing and why I was studying science or ecology. And what I've been building for my PhD is programming skills. So I've been mainly working on computers and creating models for species distribution modeling. So from first a kid that wanted to be a vet, I'm still interested in animals and the distribution of animals, and I'm now building models for us to understand what's happening. The other thing I want to mention is it's not only about what you gain as a knowledge. You also get knowledge from visiting other researchers, presenting at conference, posters or talk. So a lot about science is about sharing knowledge and getting to know everyone that is doing research in your area in order to improve your set of skills. And you may have seen this particular picture. I kind of like it because it's a good representation of what a PhD is. Your plan might be this one, and it's good to have a plan, but in reality, what's going to happen is more likely to be that. You will have some things that won't work in your models or in your fieldwork, but there is always some kind of lights that will come out at some point, and a big part of succeeding or doing a PhD. It's resilience. It's about how you progress and you improve after drawbacks and how you can get to the end. So if you're not convinced, or if you think that it's a risky move to do a PhD, well, there is also so much more to it. You get to visit many places, doing fieldwork in different countries, meeting new researchers. So I think for me, that's a good thing about doing a PhD. Is about where to split your reason and doing something that you like. Yeah, so go for it.
Thank you, Emmy. Looks like you've had a really interesting journey along the way as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Right, so if there are nothing in the chat, there may come questions that we'll forward on to you later on, Emmy. Okay, our next presenter is Lachlan Rogers, who's a lecturer in physics. Lachlan, do you have slides?
No, I'm not going to go with slides.
Cool.
I'm going to go faster without them.
Okay, thanks, Lachlan.
All right, so my name's Lachlan Rogers, and I am a physicist, which means that I shine lasers at diamonds to make them glow. So when I say diamonds, I really do mean diamonds. I don't know if you can see, I need to hide my face. There, just in my finger, a tiny diamond. But actually the ones that I work with are much less impressive. They're black. This one, no, it's not going to work, I'm sorry. It's not going to work. What I'm going to do is share a link in the chat at the end of my talk, which you can go to and watch after you've respectfully listened to all the other people. And it has a little video that you can see a bit about my research. So I actually was an honours student here at the University of Newcastle a number of years ago. And the research project that I did had nothing to do with diamonds or even this field of physics. It was to do with the region of space outside the atmosphere, but close to the Earth, where satellites live, basically. So I guess the first observation is you don't need to feel constrained. I know some previous speakers have said this. I did an honours degree, an honours project. I loved the project, but I wanted to play with a little bit more of the tools and toys in the research lab. And so I changed when I went to a PhD project to quite a different topic. So I did my PhD in Canberra at the Australian National University. And from there, I went to Germany as a postdoc and worked in the city of Ulm, which happens to be where Albert Einstein was born, although he didn't spend much time there because his parents moved to Switzerland soon afterwards. But it was a great place to do physics, and a successful ARC fellowship brought me back to Australia, where I was working at Macquarie University in Sydney, and I've only just returned to Newcastle as a lecturer, and I'm very excited to be setting up a research program on glowing diamonds here. So that's a little bit about my journey, but along the way, I've observed and learnt a few things myself that I just wanted to share generally about the art, the way that you would do a research degree, honours, master's, PhD. So the first thing, and this is, I'm going to speak specifically about physics because that's what I know, but I suspect it's true in other disciplines. It's just important to remember that when you finish a bachelor's degree, you're still quite ignorant. And I say that respectfully because it's a huge amount of work. But if you think about it, physics as an intense, rigorous academic discipline has been going for 400 years and has been answering a lot of the easy and obvious questions a long time ago. In real terms, when you finish a bachelor's degree, the physics that you have learnt is at least 100 years out of date. That's like doing a biology degree and not learning anything about DNA or even antibiotics. It's quite striking when you think in those terms. Maths is perhaps even worse. So your honours year has to take you from that position, which is a robust, certified, good quality physics degree, wherever you did it, to the point where you can do something new, novel, and exciting in a research capacity in perhaps a PhD. That's why honours is such an intense year. You've heard a couple of students already say this. It's quite widely acknowledged that honours is a very ferocious, in terms of its academic pressure and its kind of relentless pace. That's what honours is. But that ferocity, that intensity also means it's one of the most fun and exhilarating experiences if you've got a little bit of a passion for the topic, which you probably do if you've pursued it through to a bachelor's, third year bachelor's degree level. So it's not that people are trying to torture you. People in honours are trying to take you to the point where you can access and understand some of that really exciting stuff that happens at the cutting edge. For me, the thing that drives all of this is the thrill of discovery. And I'm going to touch on this because it's fundamental to everyone doing research, but hasn't been hit the spotlight on it too much yet. I, in my PhD, went into a lab, shone a laser at a diamond and detected infrared glowing light coming from the diamond. And it was the first time ever that anybody in the world had seen that particular infrared light coming from the diamond. A lot more technical details that I'd love to share with you, but I don't have time. But I was literally the first person in the world to make that observation. That is exhilarating. It's almost addictive. And you get a little bit hooked on the idea that you can literally do things no one has seen, measure things no one's measured, understand something for the very first time, and then have to explain it to your supervisor so they can understand it as the second person in the world. It's a very cool feeling. And that passion, that excitement really drives a lot of the positive feelings that people have about their PhD experience. There are some negative feelings about a PhD experience. You'll often hear students partway through a research project sounding slightly less enthusiastic than they did at the start. There's a number of reasons for that, but one just to keep your eyes open for as you manage yourself kind of mentally and emotionally through the journey is just to remember that your undergraduate degree has trained you to have regular feedback, check-ins, exams, assignments, tutorials, where you get feedback. Yes, I'm tracking okay, I understand this. A research project doesn't have those waypoints. It doesn't have the signposts. There are no mid-semester exams for your PhD or even for your honours project. So that's one reason why students find it a little bit stressful. And I recommend just watching your supervisor pretty carefully. If they seem reasonably relaxed about your project, then it's very unlikely that you're going as badly as you fear. A couple of other people have commented on supervisors, PhDs, honours, they're often done as part of a team. When I was in Germany, I was working in a research group that had nearly 50 people. That's a large research team. It had a whole lot of sub-projects going on, but that was nearly 50 people in our team meetings. When I was a PhD student, I was often working in a team of 2 or 3. So there's a wide range, but you are working with people. That's one of the things that makes it fun. It can also be a cause of stresses. So one thing that I recommend is when you're looking at projects, don't just think the science. Also take the time to go and talk to a student who might already be working with that supervisor or a student who's in the group, in the team, and ask a little bit about its dynamics. There are different styles of supervision. You probably know a little bit about yourself after having been 3 years or more at university. So just take that into consideration when you're looking for projects and supervisors. And probably I'll finish with one observation, which is your research hire degree says so much about you beyond the specific detail of its topic. I might have studied a particular kind of red glowing diamond that has amazing applications in quantum technologies that are going to revolutionize the world. But that's not what would make me attractive to an employer in a wide range of fields that I could have sought employment. What does make a difference are things like the fact that I have demonstrated and proven to myself and anyone else who cares that I can be self-motivated when I need to on a long time scale to push through a tough project. I have refined and developed advanced skills of clarity of communication, of complex ideas. I've practiced the art of looking at problems, breaking them down into accessible components, and then tackling them in a structured, systematic, and logical way. And I've learned and I've refined my ability to learn new things. These are the sort of general skills that your research hire degree says about you. Massively boosts your employability and studied physics. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Lachlan. I 100% endorse absolutely everything you said. Yep, so everybody listen, okay, to what Lachlan told you.
Here is the link coming now in the chat. Please don't watch it now. There are other really good speakers that are about to share interesting advice with you, but bookmark it and watch it later.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much, Lachlan. Okay, our next presenter is Natasha Brasington, who's currently doing an honours year in food science and human nutrition. Is that right, Natasha?
It is, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll just apologise in advance. I don't have the best internet connection, so just bear with me.
Working okay at the moment.
Perfect. All right. Well, yeah, I'm doing my honours in food science and human nutrition, and I'm just going to talk about my journey from undergraduate to postgraduate. So I'm just going to be upfront with you guys and say, 3 years ago when I started my bachelor's degree, I was told I was going to do my honours. I never would have believed it. In fact, growing up, I was a very distracted kid and I found learning quite difficult. And it wasn't until I was in around year 11 that I started to really enjoy learning. And so when I started my bachelor's degree, I had a lot of adjusting to do to the tertiary style of teaching. And my first year was a little bit of a roller coaster. And then I started my second year and I started to ground my feet and I started getting good marks and I learned how to communicate with my lecturers, and they started to teach us about their research, and I became quite intrigued in that. And also we had a lot of PhD students floating around our workshops and lectures, and I would always ask them what they were researching, and I was always in awe and so impressed by what they were doing. So that's when I started to think, what will I do after this degree? And research came to mind, but I got disheartened because the thought of doing my honours or a PhD seemed really impossible to me. And so the thoughts going through my head included, I'm definitely not smart enough to do this, I'm not good enough, I'm not the picture perfect student. Then that idea sort of just left my head, went to the back of my head, and I wasn't thinking about it. And when I started my third year, I actually received an email from one of my lecturers who was the honours program convener for my degree. And she was inviting me to come and watch an honours student present her project proposal. And I was so happy an academic thought of me in regards to honours. I thought, you've got to be joking, right? And I was so nervous, but why was I nervous? I wasn't even the one presenting. I was just nervous to go in there and think I'd never be able to do what this woman was doing. And by the end of the presentation, I knew honours was what I wanted to do. Like, it was so motivating. That's what I wanted to do. So I organised to meet up with my honours program convener, who is Emma. She is actually my supervisor right now. And we looked at my transcript. And my transcript wasn't perfect. But honours was still doable as long as I worked hard for the last year. And I had some ups and downs that year, and it came to the final exams. And let me tell you, one particular subject was a struggle for me, and all I needed was a pass. The rest of my subjects I did really well in, and I just had to fight for that pass. And then I waited for what seemed like a lifetime to find out I got into honours, and I was so nervous, but I made it. And so since then, it has been an amazing year, even with all of the obstacles that have happened in the world. Actually researching and working on a particular question and topic that hasn't been fully studied is so rewarding and exciting. And working with like-minded and amazing academics is so motivating. I especially want to thank my supervisors, Emma and Tamara. They've been so supportive and helpful. So if you are thinking about doing honours, but you're second guessing yourself, don't. Life has no limitations except the ones you make. So thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. Lovely journey you've been on. And may there be more research coming up in a PhD.
Yes, I'd love to.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next presenter is Emma Beckett, who we have.
We should let the supervisors go first next time, Francis. Tash just made me cry, so.
I was too. And Emma is a lecturer and honours coordinator in food science and human nutrition program, and incidentally, Natasha's supervisor. Thanks, Emma.
Natasha got me all teary just then, so hopefully I can get through this. I didn't make slides so that we could be a bit more agile, and I didn't want to repeat what everyone was saying at this point, so you've just got my floating head to listen to. I hope that's enough.
Yep.
Other than being completely proud of Natasha and seconding everything she said, I have a few points that I want to add myself from my perspective as a former honours and PhD student and now an academic and the honours coordinator. So I have 4 qualifications from this university, including my honours degree and my PhD, which was a joint project with CSIRO. And I also have another qualification from another university, incidentally. So up to 5 now. I think I'll stop. But one of the really important things that I think a lot of people have touched on is pick a project, whether it's honours or PhD, something that you're interested in, something you're passionate about. And I think that's one of the reasons why most of us do science is we want to change the world. We want to make the world a better place, or we want to figure out how things are going, how things are happening. We've got that natural curiosity. But just remember, when you're picking your project, whether it's honours or PhD, you don't need to solve the whole problem on your own. You don't need to change the world from unknown to the final solution all on your own. You can pick one part of that, and you're part of the overall body of knowledge that builds up to change the world baby steps at a time. Most of us are not going to win Nobel Prizes for our PhDs or our honours work. I also want to second what Lachlan said, that you're not stuck in your honours topic. He did the pivot from space to diamonds and lasers. I did the pivot even more strongly than that. My honours project was in immunology and microbiology. My PhD was then in food science and genetics, and now I do a whole variety of food and nutrition type of research. So you're not locked in. Pick a topic that you can complete and be interested in while you do it, but don't think that that's a box you're going to be in for the rest of your life. You don't even need to stay in the academic box if you do a PhD or honours. My first job out of my honours, I didn't go straight from honours into PhD. I worked at the Commonwealth Bank for several years after my honours project. CommBank actively recruits scientists because of their analytical and problem solving skills. I spent a few years on the phones there, taking phone calls from NetBank customers, and then moved into a more analytical role with the bank. And if I hadn't have gotten married and moved away, I would probably still be working for the bank now and probably would never have even thought about doing a PhD. I want to second what Natasha said and what Emmy said about resilience, and you don't have to be the smartest, the book smartest, the one who was always the best at exams in undergrad to be the most successful at honours. That resilience and the perseverance is really much more important than being the cleverest, because we do call them experiments for a reason, and sometimes they just don't work. And if you're used to everything always going great for you in your undergrad, you're probably going to find it very devastating when your experiments don't go your way. And we've talked a lot about soft skills today. I hate that name because they're so important. But whatever you're doing in your honours or your PhD, try and think about what you can do to develop other skills outside of your actual research. So during my PhD, I got to write an article for The Conversation, which is an academic web page where academics write for normal people, non-academics. And that's led to a whole extra facet of my career where I spend a lot of time now doing media work and outreach work, and not just doing research or teaching all the time. So think about what you can do in terms of that and sharing your research with the rest of the world, because it really is quite rewarding and a very special thing to do. Very happy to answer any questions. Anyone has anything specific about food science, but good luck whatever point in the journey you're at. You'll learn a lot about yourself and your research area at the same time. Have fun.
Thank you, Emma. Very inspiring too. Okay, nothing coming up. I think probably everybody is writing down their questions and they're going to send an email later on, unless something pops into their head right now. Okay, so our next presenter is Megan Harris, who's currently enrolled in a PhD in exercise and sports science. Thank you, Megan.
Cool. Thanks for having me today. I'll just share my screen and I've just got some slides. So as Frances said, my area is exercise and sports science, and I'm just going to talk to you today about my journey and how I got to where I am today. So I did honours in 2017 at the University of Newcastle, and I'm currently 2.5 years into my PhD, which I think is going well, but we'll see. So my journey was a little bit different. So I didn't go straight from my undergrad degree to my honours year. So you can see on the screen here, after my undergrad degree, I just wanted to get out and work and earn some money. So I actually ended up case managing for Allianz, and I case managed a range of injuries which related to my sports science degree. From there, I went to go work for an insurance broker, and I moved more into the work health and safety area. But what I did learn from actually going into the industry first was that I was really passionate about injuries. And that's where my passion was. So the more I kind of worked, the more I realized that's what I wanted to do, which led me to my honours year. So I knew then that that's what I was passionate about. So I actually contacted my supervisor, Dr. Susie Edwards, to see if she had any projects going with injuries. So in 2017, I started my honours year, and we looked at jump landing mechanics and injuries in Australian basketballers. And I think this is really important for me because it actually enabled me to answer the why. Why do some people get injured and others, you know, were healthy or didn't get injured? So my honours year was jam-packed, but it was a really good learning experience. And whether or not I did do a PhD, I think that would have set me apart from just doing my 3-year undergraduate degree. So with my honours year, I got to go down to the Australian Institute of Sport. I got to collect some biomechanics data. I got to work with Basketball Australia athletes. And it was full on, but I definitely think for me, it was worth it. But I think the main thing was that I picked something that I was passionate about and something that I was interested in. As many people have said today, you're spending the whole year on one topic. So when you do pick your topic, make sure it is something that you are passionate about and you can actually stay with for a whole year. So my honours year actually led me to go on to do a PhD, which is where I want to be. Some other things that I've accomplished, and I don't think I would have been able to do without my honours year, is I have been able to present at international conferences overseas. I got to go back to the IS and work with the MBA junior global teams as well. And I've also learnt new skills now. I've learned how to take ultrasounds and different things like that. So I'll just keep it short and sweet. But I think if you are thinking about honours, think about what subjects you like in your undergrad degrees, what subjects you're doing well in. And when you are picking as well, make sure you pick a supervisor who I guess has a topic that you're interested in and that you will be able to work with for the whole year. And that's it.
Thank you, Megan. Okay, our next presenter is Dr. Anthony Ume, something like that. And he's currently a research associate in the Global Centre for Environmental Remediation, and he got his PhD just last year in September 2019. So thank you, Anthony.
Thanks, Frances. Hi, guys. In trying not to repeat what every other person has mentioned, I would just sort of summarize my talk with respect to saying, you know, when going into research, you sort of always have to think about the end from the beginning. So what do I really want to do, you know, in life, and would I really need a PhD or an honors to get to that point? Answering that question is really important in making a decision whether, you know, you need to do an honors or a PhD. So I did my bachelor's in zoology from Nigeria, and I proceeded on to do a master's at Lancaster University in the UK. During my master's, I was, in fact, I already knew I was going to do a PhD, so I sort of started discussing with my then supervisor that, hey, I would like to do a PhD, so in case any opportunity comes up. My PhD supervisor at the University of Newcastle used to, was a collaborator of my master supervisor then in the UK. So when an opportunity opened up, I mean, I was first to know that there was an opportunity in Newcastle, and yeah, that brought me to Newcastle. So it's always important to sort of discuss what your passions are and what you want to do in the future with your current supervisors, so that any opportunity that opens up, you know, you're first to know. The PhD for me gave me quite a lot of skills, and one of the key skills I think is communication and writing. You know, after my PhD, I was able to publish about 7 papers. My first paper, when it went to my supervisor, you know, you could see a lot of corrections, a lot of, you know, but at the end of my PhD, I now submit manuscripts that do not really need so much review from my supervisor. So that shows you a lot of growth and development within the period of 4 years. So my writing skills really improved. And Amy was also saying previously that, you know, the PhD is a really rigorous the PhD process is really rigorous. You know, when I perform experiments in the lab and things are not working well, and you just take a breather, go out, you know. Sometimes I actually go out dancing, you know. There are lots of clubs, societies at the university. In fact, I was one of those who found the Latin dancing society at the university. And, you know, you just find that while dancing, or an idea just pops up into your head, you go back into the lab, you try that and it's working, you know? So sometimes you just have to take a break as well, and when things are not working, and when you come back refreshed, you look at the problem with a new, in a new way, and, you know, things just work. So overall, I think the PhD or a research project it's really a rewarding activity. You're able to learn how to solve problems. You're able to learn how to communicate better, how to write, and it opens up a lot of opportunities afterwards. I've been able, during my PhD, I was able to, you know, present my work at different conferences in the US, in Canada, in India, in Singapore, you know. And it's always rewarding when people come to you after a presentation and they're like, you know, I've learned a lot, I'm going to talk to you later. And they actually do contact you later. And then it also sort of opens up a lot of opportunities to collaborate with people in the future. So if you're really thinking about PhD and you think it's right for you, you should go for it. It's worth it. Thanks.
Thanks, Anthony. You actually managed to find a few things that other people hadn't said. Well done. Okay, our next presenter is Brenna Hender, and don't worry if everybody said everything already, Brenna, you can repeat it if you like. Okay, so Brenna's currently enrolled in the Bachelor of Psychology Honours program. Thanks, Brenna.
Hi everyone, as Francis said, my name's Brenna and I'm actually the current Psychology Honours student representative. Prior to starting my degree, I spent a couple of years working in a mine, and part of my role was to ensure that employees were up to date with their job-specific qualifications. And that sort of sparked my interest in pursuing qualifications for a more professional career. Due to complications moving between overseas and Australian schooling, I actually graduated high school without an ATAR, so I completed the UON New Step program. I received the Callahan Award and was allowed to apply for any degree of my choice, and I chose psychology. When I started my degree, I was interested in supporting people with various diagnoses and in the reasoning of the human mind. But what I was not anticipating was the amount of statistics and biology study. That being said, I really enjoyed the challenge and grew to love those subjects. I really enjoyed second year statistics because the assessments allowed me to design and conduct a mini study and analyze the data. it was that sort of practical assessment that had me thinking about a career in research. But on a side note, don't let statistics scare you away from research, because you can get help with it and you can undertake projects in qualitative data instead. In third year, I completed work integrated learning at the cognitive psychology lab on campus. And during that placement, I was able to assist an honours student with their project. And some of those tasks I did included literary searches, computer coding, editing, learning about cognitive theories, and participant supervision. So this experience gave me a taste of what an honours project would be like. And I highly recommend either completing a work integrated learning course or finding a volunteer experience with one of the many UON researchers. I completed my honours year part-time, and this allowed me to gain further lab experience before undertaking my honours project for my thesis. So during the first semester, I spent time working in the neuroimmunology lab and the biomedical lab. And in these labs, I was working with rodents, and I was focusing much more on like a biological influence on behaviour. So I was dissecting and collecting tissue samples, conducting DNA analysis techniques, learning about the functions of the nervous system and the influences of experiences with infection and disease. And I was also caring for those animals. And I'm sharing this with you to give you an idea of the wide range of possible project topics. In the COG lab, I was working with humans from a super theory-driven perspective. And in the Neuro lab, I was working from a really biological perspective. So everyone's honours year is going to be totally unique to them based on their interests and their projects. For example, in my current project, I'm investigating the effects of parenting a child with a complex medical disorder on parental well-being. And I chose this project because I'm interested in developmental, bio, and behavioural psych. And this project sort of encompasses those topics. So ask yourself what your areas of interest are, and then investigate which of the UON labs cater to those interests. It's a really cool experience to finish your first 3 years and then be able to customize your learning experience to your strengths and your interests. It also feels great to practically apply the skills and theories you've learned throughout your degree. Like others have said, you don't need to be a genius or already know a lot about a project topic to complete a thesis project. You just have to apply the skills you've already learned, be motivated, willing to learn, and be organized. Your project does not have to lead to a major breakthrough, though it's nice when it does, or be world-changing. It just needs to be well-designed and well-written. Research is fun. You will have the opportunity to try out new skills, learn about new topics, make industry connections, make scientific discoveries, develop theories, or even reinterpret older theories. You'll be presented with a lot of opportunities, and you'll be able to identify what you do and don't enjoy when you're sort of thinking about what you're going to do afterwards. So to conclude, I really urge you to consider undertaking future research. And not only is it beneficial in terms of your qualifications, it's also an opportunity for you to somewhat customize your learning experience, make connections, seek opportunities, and exercise the knowledge and skills you've already learned.
Thank you, Brenna. And a very interesting journey, and yet again, a different journey. Yep. Cool, thank you. Okay, any questions, put them in the chat and or email us and we'll forward them on to Brenna at the end of the thing. Okay, so now we have Riley Innes, who's going to give us who's a PhD student, very nearly submitted in psychology. And he's going to tell us a bit about his PhD journey, and then we're going to show his 3-minute thesis presentation, if we can make it work. I'm sure we will be able to, we practiced before. And just to show you the kinds of things that you can do as a PhD student. Okay, so Riley, you're on.
Cool. As Francis said, we're going to show my 3-minute thesis later, but I'd also encourage everyone on Wednesday to check out the university final, go and see some of the other talks and different things that people are doing, because they're all really, really fun. In terms of my journey, I've just listened to all the different people that have spoken, and I've had the most straightforward linear journey possible, I think. did my undergrad here. I went to honours here. I did a summer scholarship here, and then I've gone into my PhD here as well. So this is like my 8th year of study here at uni now. As Francis said, I'm like very, very, very close to submitting my thesis. So I think like people have touched on a lot of different things as to why it's good to do an honours and a PhD and further research and that sort of thing. But I think I'll just sort of say a couple of things, like emphasize a few points and just give some tips on that stuff as well. So one big thing, like one of the things I did early on, I saw a lecturer who I enjoyed their lecture, and I went and spoke to him and we had a chat, and then I did some volunteer work in his lab, and then that led to the summer scholarship, which led to my honours, which led to my PhD. So as I said, it's very linear and straightforward, but as a psych grad, I think I have to say that you should really talk about it in a way that you should talk to other PhD students, you should talk to other honours students, and talk to supervisors as well. With this stuff, we don't have like Google reviews or anything, so we can't see like who's got 4 stars and who's a 5-star supervisor. So you have to go and find that out for yourself, and it can seem daunting at times, but it's really valuable, I think, as well. So yeah, email some people that you know from the labs or from the different areas you want to go into. Email the supervisors or drop in and see them. Obviously, that's a bit harder at the moment, but definitely email them. And if they don't reply, email them again. I know it seems annoying, but it's just because we're like often very busy. So just email us again and we'll get back to you. The thing about researchers and PhD students is that I've found that everyone I've spoken to is very, very honest. So they'll give you an honest opinion about what working in an area is like and what a PhD is like. So definitely just reach out and have a chat, because I think one of the biggest things with high degree research type stuff is you really need to know what you're getting into. So everyone that's had a good experience that I've heard of knew exactly what they were getting into. They knew what the expectations were in terms of, like, I had to learn some programming and I knew that that was going to happen. So when it happened, I was like, okay, this is fine. But also knowing, you know, what your work hours are going to be, your holidays, you know, setting goals, what other people are like that you'll be working with. Yeah, and so to sort of find those things out, just go and talk to people and they will 100% help you out. As people have said before too, you gain a lot of skills from a PhD, and skills that will sort of help you in the real world. And you also, I don't think too many people have said it so far, but often to sort of supplement your income, you can definitely work as well at the same time, but you have to sort of balance it out. And that comes down to, again, expectations. And, you know, knowing what you're getting into, but you also get some sort of teaching experience if you help out with tutoring, that sort of thing. So there's definitely like a lot of skills that you'll gain that you can transfer to a variety of different areas that you really don't get from just purely the undergrad degree. Someone also mentioned networking too. Networking is really important for you, but also I find that the supervisors that you'll work with have amazing networks, and just through you being supervised by your supervisor, you'll get to find people through those networks as well. And so if you're at a conference and you say, hey, I'm looking to submit my PhD pretty soon, they'll say, what are you doing next? And you go, I don't know. And they say, well, I've got a position coming up that would suit you perfectly. You should look into it. And these kind of things actually happen. So I've had that happen to me last year, and now hopefully I'm sort of waiting to get overseas for a job in Amsterdam. So these things do happen just from these sort of networks. So conferences, another cool thing you get to do. Not at the moment, obviously, but there's still some awesome virtual conferences that I've been to. So if you're thinking, I'm not going to start a PhD yet because I might not attend conferences, you still get to do some awesome stuff, and you'll still get to go to conferences eventually. Yeah, so I think it's like very daunting to undertake at first, but it's so different to undergrad. It's very unique and individualized, I guess. So it's a completely different experience to your undergrad experience. But in Newcastle, we have a super, super strong research team and some really strong researchers here as well. So yeah, it's definitely worth having a look, or like just what's around. So some of my research has been done in, like I worked in helicopter simulators and stuff like that, which is super cool. And things you probably heard today that it's like, wow, I didn't know people did this stuff at Newcastle, but we have some amazing researchers at Newcastle. Just check it out. So yeah, I'll finish up there. My PhD experience gets a 5-star Google review. Thanks.
Thank you, Riley. And now you see what happens to people when they're just about to submit their PhD. Yep. Well done, Riley. Thanks. Okay, we're now going to play Riley's 3-minute thesis presentation, which won him a place in the Newcastle University finals of the 3-minute thesis. Here we go.
Let's talk about multitasking. Many people think that multitasking is the only way to get through the day. Now, the thing about multitasking is that, well, you're not really multitasking, but rather, like juggling, you're switching your focus from one item to the next. If I was to ask you to quickly count the balls being juggled, that would be an easy task. But what about saying the alphabet backwards at the same time? Go on, try it. This is hard. And here we find ourselves tripping over our actions. We know that when driving, attempting to multitask through texting can have very serious consequences. This is because each time we rapidly switch between tasks, we are likely to miss important information or fail to respond to one task as we're focused on the other. In essence, we drop the ball. So if multitasking is so important in the modern world, how can we improve our skills or juggle more items? And more importantly, what are the consequences if we don't? In my research, I measure that mental strain to understand the effects of multitasking and quantify the demand placed on your attention. This demand is known as cognitive workload. To measure workload, I use a reliable response time task. Much of my research has been focused on validating this measure for new purposes and environments. However, I've also tested highly trained individuals in comparison with undergrads to understand how we can improve our multitasking ability. I've conducted studies to see whether giving people helpful information is actually helpful, and I've extended this research to real-world aviation environments. These studies show the importance and scope of cognitive workload measurement, as this factor is critical to performance, yet so commonly overlooked in design and policy. The results I've found show that most people are very easily overloaded. I've shown that sometimes adding useful information actually makes life harder. I've found that your task switching ability can be improved. And most importantly, my research has enabled access to these simple measures to solve real-world problems. So often we're tempted to try and juggle more, to be more efficient, to take in more information. But these actions have consequences. Just like juggling, multitasking is hard, which is why it's critical to evaluate mental effort. With a measure like that researched in my PhD, we can make sure that systems are safe, provide just the right amount of assistance, and even prevent fatal consequences before they happen. So, how many balls can you really juggle?
Stops you. Thank you, Riley. That was fantastic. And good luck in the UON finals.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Okay, so our next presenter is Greg Ward, who's the careers consultant, who has about 10 minutes.
Oh, look, that's absolutely fine. I had a presentation, but everyone's done a really good job of covering some of the key points today. So while the presentation's of a bit of use, and I'm happy to share it with you guys to send it out later, I figured there'd be a lot more use in just reflecting on some of the points that were covered, if that's all right. So in terms of the career side of careers, like I've been doing this for about 6 years now, so I meet a lot of students, both undergraduate and postgraduate, and some of the best traits you see in people who have successful careers are really around the ability to ask questions. And you do see that a lot more when people come through. Just move this a bit closer to me. Not that I look any better as it gets closer, but that's fine. But some of the abilities of people to ask those questions when they've done postgraduate study, I think they question more things, and it really does help you with your career. So that's really important. Okay, another one of the key points I picked up here was building your network. So not only asking questions and being curious, it's actually also to have success in your career, you should just get out and do things. Now, you would have never thought that going to a brewery would help you meet your supervisor, but Kay gave a great example of that, and that's what it's all about. Whether it was the dancing that we spoke about before, or following a different passion, be it the beach or the basketball or whatever it might be, just getting involved in things, whether it's during your undergraduate or during your postgraduate study, really does help you. Just meeting people is so important. Okay, so that comes down to getting involved in things you like. You don't have to say you're really into your honours topic. That's cool, but it doesn't mean that you have to just focus solely on that for the whole year. You can do other things you enjoy. Whether it's like writing for the conversation, and sorry, I didn't note everyone's name down, there's too many people. That's a really good idea, or following some side passion, it doesn't really matter. Now, one of the key things here that I really want to cover is figuring out what your transferable skills actually are. That's actually quite an important part of this. A lot of students I've met in the 6 years I've been doing this really undervalue their skills. And it doesn't matter if they've been here for years, you still have a chat with them and they're like, oh, I'm just this, or I'm just that, or I just work at Coles, or I haven't even got my PhD yet. You know, like they feel like they're inferior for some reason. It's really important to take stock and have a think about what your transferable skills are. Now, hopefully this will work. I actually, just while I was watching that last video, put a few links in the chat box. Okay, so there's 3 links in there, okay? The first link was a really interesting thing I did about last year, about 9 months ago, when I, for some reason, maybe I had too much time on my hand, got into vlogging, which is blogging but with a video camera, which in hindsight takes way too much time. Yeah, but I did it, and I actually did one on HDR students, and you probably recognize a few of the faces in it. Feel free to have a look at it later on, but it speaks about the transferable skills they actually have developed. The second link is the Foundation for Young Australians, which is not just relevant for young Australians, it's relevant for all Australians. And it speaks about the skills that employers are actually looking for. So if I jump to that, though you can't see it on my screen, some of the key things are problem solving, creativity, communication, teamwork, and many others, including presentation skills. And I'd have to say, the presentations that we've seen today, they've been fantastic. So those presentation skills that these students have picked up along the way, that will really help you when you hit the workplace as well. And the final link I've got on there is the Career Hub, which is the way you engage with us. So if you've got a question and you want to just use us as a bit of a sounding board for your career, absolutely reach out to us. As I think it was the first speaker, Catherine, said, make sure you have a think about like what you want to do with your postgraduate study before you swing into it. So yeah, we can help you through that journey as well. And that's that last link, which has got Career Hub on it. So I've just about finished most of the things I want to cover. Maybe even keep a brag file is a good idea. So if you do something good during your, well, I'm sure you will do something good during your studies, jot it down so you can use it for a job application, or you can use it in an interview, whatever it might be. It's actually really handy to have. And learn how to market yourself. Aaron has a LinkedIn profile. Aaron updated his LinkedIn profile to say he had some skill in maths, and now Canberra keeps calling him. Canberra only calls me because I owe money on my tax, so I don't get the same calls, but that's okay. But yeah, learn how to market yourself, and we can help you with your LinkedIn as well. So they're the main things I wanted to cover. If anyone's got any questions, I haven't been keeping an eye on the chat, feel free to chime in. But yeah, I'll put it out for the, Francis, I'll let you put it out for the general question and answer now, if you like. Hopefully that wasn't too much rambling.
No, that was cool. Thank you, Greg. Very sweet, short, and definitely to the point. Thank you. Okay, so we're just about at the end. If anybody has any questions, if they could pop it up on the chat now. I think we're all a bit sort of listened out.
I think there is a question, Francis, from way back. When searching for a lab, how do you weigh the options of how much funding versus how established? Sorry, it's Judy Ann, Francis. Sorry about that.
I saw that question. I saw that question in the thing, and it's a kind of question that needs to come in on a whatever it's called, a email, so we can give some proper thinking about it. I think that the answer has really been given across all the different talks to that particular question. Basically, go and talk to lots and lots of people. But certainly, if you want further information about that question, send us an email and we'll send it around to people who might be able to answer it. There's a question, there are quite a few questions here now. People must have had them all ready to go. There are lots and lots of other pathways. This is for, are there any other pathways other than going into your own lab, being an ARC DECRA person, etc.? There are lots of pathways. You can go and work in industry. You can go and work for the Commonwealth Public Service. You can go and work in any NGO. All of your skills that you gain when you're doing a PhD are transferable. So you need to go and talk to the careers people who will give you lots and lots of different options about where you might be able to go. I know people with PhDs who work in high schools and really, really enjoy it. And people in high schools are sought after for going into, well, people in high schools are searching for people with PhDs, mostly because of the transferable skills, particularly around the critical thinking. Because once you have your PhD, you're a really good critical thinker. Generally speaking, is it beneficial in terms of employment to have honours? Yes, of course it is. There are jobs that you can get out of third year. There are jobs that you can get that are probably higher level once you've got honours. There are jobs that you can get that are probably higher level once you have a PhD. So you need to be thinking about what career it is that you're most interested in going into. Go and talk to the careers people, maybe even talk to a couple of employers. Find out what sort of a salary you can go in on if you come out with a graduate or bachelor's degree, how much better you might be off if you have an honours degree, how much better you might be off if you have a master's or a PhD. For some jobs, they might say you don't even need a PhD, we prefer you didn't. Just depends what kind of a career you have in your mind. But absolutely, most people will pay you more money if you have a higher degree. So here we've got somebody majoring in physics, wants to do a PhD, research career within quantum mechanics. Can I suggest, Gerard, that you talk to Lachlan, actually send this as an email to Lachlan and he'll be able to reply. Is Lachlan still with us? No, Lachlan had to go off and do something else. So if you write an email to Lachlan, he'll be able to reply. Okay. And Greg's telling everybody that there are many factors about whether involved in whether you should go out and get a job with an undergraduate and or honours and or a PhD. And you definitely should go and talk to the careers people if you're querying where you might want to go and what you might want to do. Okay. So mostly this big long question from Jared. Are you cool with emailing Lachlan, Jared? I'll assume that you are, but we'll send your, yeah.
Yes. Send it to.
He's called Lachlan Rogers. If you look at him on the university webpage, just type in Lachlan Rogers. His email will be right next to his name. Okay, so here's a question around the people who might want to do the clinical psychology, Master of Clinical Psychology and or the clinical PhD. Really, the clinical PhD enables you to put doctor in front of your name on your little brass plate outside your practice. Yep. And also is your entry into becoming an academic clinical psychologist. So academic clinical psychologists tend to have a practice either at the university or somewhere else and also be an academic. And in spite of what they said this morning, it's not very easy to get a job in a university without a PhD these days. Okay, so doesn't look like there are any more questions in the chat. It's also a bit after 4 o'clock. Thank you very much, everybody. If you have any questions, look people up, send an email. If you can't find them, send us an email. We'll find them and send you the information and or give you a link to the person that you want to ask the question.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, and we'll close down now.
Thanks, Francis.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.